Hey guys, Oliver here, and welcome back to my Swift series. In this video, we're going to be learning about Swift extensions. Let's get started. Now, Swift as a language is fantastic, okay? It has a ton of power, there's a ton of things you can do, but many times you won't find the method you're looking for. Instead, you'll have to combine a lot of methods, you'll have to write a bunch of code, and sometimes you wish that you just had the method in the first place. That's where Swift extensions come into play. Swift extensions allow you to add these methods to the OG or the original pieces of code. For example, we have strings, we have integers, we have doubles and floats. These all have various functions, right? With addition, we have multiplication, division, stuff like that. And it all boils down to adding more functionality to these basic data types, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at how to create one of the most basic extensions, +1. So any integer we get, when we call the +1 function on it, we want it to increase its value by 1, all right? So go ahead and type with me over here, extension int, okay? So this means that for all the integers we'll have, for all the variables that are integers, we should be able to apply this function. Now our function is going to be called +1. Like any other function, you have brackets, and we're returning the new integer value. So func +1, return an integer, and we're going to return self +1. Self refers to the actual integer who's calling this function. So an integer can only call the +1 function, and we're returning itself +1. All right, so fantastic. That's basically what an extension is. Very simple, very easy to understand. Now what I can do is I can see variable num1 is equal to, let's say 10, and now I can call num1 dot +1. So now if I print this out, so print out num1 +1, I'll go ahead and see 11. Fantastic. So what happened here is that we had a variable num1, it's an integer, and since we have a new function for our integer called +1, our num1 variable was able to call it num1.+1, and we were able to return itself +1, 11. That is fantastic. Now, the next challenge comes into actually just changing the variable. For example, let's say that I don't want to return a value, I just want to modify my current num1. So instead of having to print all of this out, I just want to say something like num1 dot +1, and this by itself should increase my num1 value by 11. I don't have to set it to a new variable. So the way we can do this is over here. So func +1 returns an integer. In this case, we're not going to be returning an integer, right? We don't want to return anything. We just want to change the actual value. So extension integer function +1 returns self +1. This works, but in this case, we're not returning anything. We're going to go ahead and say self should be equal to self +1. Now in Swift and arithmetic operators and a couple lectures ago, we learned how to say this in a better way. We can say self plus equal to 1, okay? So extension int func +1, self should be equal to self +1, and we're getting an error, and the error is that left side of mutating operator isn't mutable. So the error that Swift or Xcode is telling us right now is that we have to declare that this function is mutating our variable. Right now, Xcode doesn't know that, hey, is our num1 going to change? Is it not going to change? What is this +1 function actually doing? So what we have to do is before func, we have to specify mutating. So when we say mutating function, we basically tell Swift that, hey, this +1 function is going to change the value of this variable. So now if I print out num1, I'm going to go ahead and see 11. Why? Because +1 function changed the value of num1. So now num1 is 11 instead of 10, and when you print it out, we get 11. All right, fantastic. Let's go ahead and do one more example before I end this lecture, and that's going to be square. So let's have another extension for an integer. And over here, we're going to go ahead and specify another mutating function, and this time it's going to be square. So this is one common function you might use throughout your programming careers, and it's nice to have an extension regarding how to square a number. Normally, you would have said something like num1 times num1, multiplied by itself, but the square function just looks so much more neater. So go ahead and over here, just say self times equal to self, okay? So we haven't discussed this operator yet, but just the exact same way you have plus equal to, this basically says that self should be equal to self times the value. And in this case, we're multiplying by itself. So self times equal to self will go ahead and square itself. Alright, fantastic. So now let's go ahead and run this code over here. And we're going to go ahead and just say num1.square. Okay? Now, if you try printing out this, you're not going to get anything because we're not actually returning a value. So now if we print out num1, we're going to go ahead and see 121. Fantastic. So that's the power of extensions. Extensions allow you to have your own custom functions for specific data types and structures. So you're dealing with arrays, you're dealing with dictionaries, you're dealing with strings. In any scenario when you're dealing with a specific sort of data type and you want to have your own custom functions dealing with that, you can use extensions. So extensions are very, very useful. They're very fun to play around with. If you search on Stack Overflow and a lot of different sites, you will find many different extensions that you can use throughout your code. But anyways, thanks so much for listening, guys. Hopefully extensions made sense to you. If you have any questions, let me know down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. 1, 2, 3,